And in this week, in Warcraft, the AWC Cup 4 Finals happened to help determine which 8 teams are going to go on to the Circuit Finals and have a chance at winning $900,000. Will a rogue finally make it to the Shadowlands, or another dark horse class showing up in the arena? Or are we just going to have a holy paladin like in the MDI just destroy everything? Also, 9.0.5 is out all over the world, and we will see a plethora of changes in Shadowlands' first major update. All this and more on the Warcraft Recap. Alright guys, the AWC Cup 4, the final round of competition in order to determine who from NA and who from EU will be at the Shadowlands Season 1 Circuit Finals, which will be held on March 20th and 21st over on the World of Warcraft YouTube. So, what did we see? Well, what we saw was rogues still have not made it to the Shadowlands. In fact, the teams that brought the rogues were in the NA, Unitas and also Charlotte Phoenix, both teams going down with the rogues. One comp was Disc Priest, Fire Mage, Assassination Rogue. The other comp the same, except instead of the Priest they had the Paladin, but both went down, and unfortunately sending the rogue back to Azeroth. After a brilliant finals match win over Method in a Hamsters and Hares, I freaking love that name, Hamsters and Hares, misses the cutoff for the circuit finals, unfortunately, and they are out. Only the top 4 teams from both regions go on to the circuit finals, as far as I understand. For NA, we have Method NA at 460 points, OTK at 300 points in second, Cloud9, woohoo, that's my jam. Well, at least for League of Legends. 292 points for third place, and Charlotte Phoenix 220 points for fourth place. Hamsters and Hares are fifth place with 212 and missed that cut. Over on the EU side of the world, we had a similar outcome. We had a very strange addition to the arena, however. We had a Tauren Shadow Priest. That's right. If you were wondering what the dark horse was in this week's arena matches, a Tauren Shadow Priest, which ultimately was pretty sweet to watch because War Stomp into Mind Games, stun the group, get your Mind Games off. Absolutely fantastic. That came from Reload Esports, and we may see it again in the circuit finals because they made it through. As far as what happened though, Method EU beat Skill Capped EU 3-1, sending Skill Capped EU to the losers bracket, of which they fought back out of, and in the finals beat, in the revenge match, 4-0 over Method EU. Absolutely fantastic comeback, dropping down to that losers bracket, coming back and beating Method EU in that revenge match right there at the end. So as far as where our standings are in Europe, we have Skill Capped EU at 440 points in first place. We have Method EU 420 points, second place. Kawana Gaming 232 points, big gap there between second and third. And then Reload Esports at 220 points, coming up fourth, with Creed on the outside looking in at 140 points. This could be really potentially interesting, seeing that both Method EU and Method NA have made it to the circuit finals. Could we see a Method v Method circuit finals championship match? That would be absolutely incredible. But one thing we can take from this is, in fact, the meta. We saw the winning teams consistently running the exact same composition, or with a slight tweak. One that was nearly every single time in the winning composition, the Holy Paladin. As we talked last week on the MDI, Holy Paladin is absolutely insane. Not in the same way in the MDI as they are in the AWC, but they're still insane. They put out a lot of healing and they have a lot of utility to keep the group alive. The Fire Mage was a staple across all of these metas for the people who are winning. Holy Paladin, Fire Mage, pretty much staple across the board. Now this flex DPS position. We saw people obviously fill in some Boomkins. They lost. We saw people fill in some Elemental Shamans. They lost. We saw some people throw in some Ass Rogues. They lost. The comps that did, however, seem to have some success were the Arms Warrior and the Shadow Priest. We saw a lot of Holy Paladin, Fire Mage, Arms Warrior, or Shadow Priest. But not to discount, we also saw some Ret Paladin sneak in there and the Windwalker Monk. So there were definitely some tweaks to that comp, and we saw it between matches based on who picked what. Some teams would adjust that comp between the Arms Warrior, Shadow Priest, or bring in kind of those more dark horses to the competition of Windwalker Monk and Ret Paladin. But if you are really interested in arena or PvP at the top level, we're talking these games are lasting 10 plus minutes. We're talking 20 into 30% of the dampening for the healing. These matches are long, they're intense, and you really get to see some really high level play showcased on this stage. And start thinking about, if you're playing, maybe you should change up your threes comp and include a Holy Paladin, Fire Mage, and then pick your flex DPS out of Arms Warrior or Shadow Priest, and hey, you might start gaining those rankings up to that 2200, you know, if you want that. But stay away from the rogues. They're clearly still back in Azeroth. They didn't make it. They just they didn't make it. Aside for China, who has somehow figured out how to get them in their big Mythic plus, I don't know. Somehow China has figured out how to grab the rogues from Azeroth, bring them into Shadowlands, and make them really awesome. Good job, China. For the rest of the world, well, they're just not here. But anyway, Shadowlands Season 1 Circuit Finals held on March 20th and March 21st, starting at 1 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on the WoW YouTube. So go check that out over on their channel on those days if you are interested in arena combat. Finally, the first major patch of Shadowlands is now out this week. The United States got it on Tuesday, EU gets it on Wednesday. And with this patch, we get a lot of tuning changes, we get the Valor System, and just a lot of changes to Castle Nathria and dungeons, and a lot of things that players have been looking for, and things that maybe Blizzard missed the mark on. So let's start off with the first one, which is conduits. So as of right now, if you wanted to get your best in slot conduit, which is like your class ability. So for Resto Shaman Maldraxxus, it'd be Primordial Wave, or Venthyr would be Chain Harvest. Those conduits only came from the world bosses at item level 200, which would be considered rank 5. Or you could also go to the venereal disease in the mall and potentially, with RNGesus on your side, could potentially get higher conduits. Starting with 905, you will now be able to get your class coven specific conduits at up to 226 from Castle Nathria. These are coming from different bosses in Castle Nathria, including Sire Daddy Danny himself. So any boss that is currently in LFR, normal, heroic, or mythic can now have a chance to drop the Covenant specific conduit that they may have. Now, you can go check on Wowhead and it'll give you a complete list of those conduits and what bosses drop them. Large-scale dungeon and raid changes have been made with this patch. Obviously, the Hall of Fames are now closed, so starting today with 905, you will be able to do cross-realm Mythic progression or Mythic raiding in Castle Nathria. With that coming in, there are definitely some nerfs that are coming into it as well. For example, Council of Blood. There is several changes here, including the Veteran Stone Guard. Their health and damage has been reduced by 10%. Their health, 10% reduction on Mythic difficulty. Their damage, 10% reduction on all difficulties. Also, the Sin Touch Blade that they cast will now be cast less frequently on all difficulties. So it might change up some of those kill orders that you may have out there. Who knows? Maybe you like the current kill order you have. Maybe you can handle everything that you want to handle. But anyways, there are some nerfs coming down for Council of Blood there with the Veteran Stone Guard. Also, Dancing Fever, the damage has been reduced by 10%. I know Council of Blood isn't exactly everyone's favorite. Find your partner. Dance until you bleed. You know, I don't think it's everyone's favorite encounter, but they are definitely nerfing it here. Dancing Fools have had their health reduced by 10% on Mythic difficulty. And also Soul Spikes, 5% damage reduction on all difficulties. So not too many other changes. In fact, I don't see any other major dungeon change or raid changes. Sorry about that. In Castle Nathria, but Council of Blood definitely took a nice big beat stick right there from the Blizzard nerf bat. There are some other minor changes to some other dungeons. Halls of Atonement received some changes. Sanguine Depths, again, not getting too into those too much right now. But all these things can be found, like I said, Wowhead, Icy Veins, whatever your new site is. And a lot of it was already known. It's been on the PTR. People have tested this out, but there is quite a bit of change from the last day of testing into 905. And at least on Wowhead, you can find them highlighted in yellow. So you can scroll down and see what you didn't know already. One of the biggest changes, and honestly, I think it was because of the community outcry when they announced this change, they've made a change to the Great Vault when it comes to getting your Mythic Keystone. Previously, when you completed, let's say, a plus 15, the next week, I believe you got a plus 14. You always got one key level less than what you completed the week prior. Blizzard didn't like this necessarily. Players didn't like this necessarily. So what they decided to do was, hey, if you complete a 15, you get a 15. But that wasn't it. Now what they added in there was a degradation. So if you didn't complete that particular level, it would go down and down and down each week. You would still receive a key, but it would go down until, again, you could complete it, and then you would get that level of key going into the next week. Players didn't necessarily like the first rendition of it, but after talking to several of my guild members and several of my Mythic Plus friends that love doing Mythic Pluses, we kind of agree that the system that got implemented is a good one. If your highest Mythic Keystone completion during a week is a plus 15, you will get a plus 15 from your Great Vault in the next week. So week 1, you complete a 15. Week 2, you get the plus 15 key. If you run that 15 key during the 2, but fail to timer it, however, complete another plus 15 and timer it, you will still receive a plus 15 key the next week. Mythic Keystone Dungeons will give you a degraded or a 1- if you're unable to complete that level that you set the previous week. So again, if you complete a 15 and then the next week, let's say you can only get a 13, well, you're probably going to get a degraded key, a 14, and then the next week down and down and down and down. So you need to make sure that you're completing those higher level keys and staying consistent with it if you want to continue to get those high level keys. In the past, you know, you really had to push yourself. If you wanted a 15 key, well, you had to get the like 16 in order to get one less. So I like the implementation that you are rewarded with what you get out of it. There were some major changes to Battlegrounds as well. including Ashram, Isle of Conquest, Wintergrasp, and Seething Shore. In fact, Seething Shore has been temporarily removed from the Rated Battlegrounds rotation because they do have some issues with the starting area that they are investigating, and we'll probably get that fixed. But changes have been made to Ashram, Isle of Conquest, and Wintergrasp, namely because all three of those, in my opinion, felt really, really bad. A lot of players struggled with those particular places, and it just felt bad playing on them. So they made changes to wall health, damage from the catapults and the battering rams, the different healths of the different leaders and heroes that you interact with there, to hopefully make these games more interactable. Because ultimately, PvP sucks if you can't interact, right? Like, who wants to PvP when one person's stunned the entire time? Though we haven't seen the new area that's going to be coming out in the mall for 9.1, which is supposed to be holding the leaders of the different covens, and they're attacking the mall for that raid that they talked about at BlizzCon, they did make an interesting change to the mall, and it seems like an accessibility change to me. There is now an account-wide unlock that has been added to the venereal disease vendor that gives teleportation nodes along the walkable chains in Torghast, so you can quickly cross the chains and no longer have to face your fear of heights. My assumption is there are players out there that probably never do Torghast because they've got a fear of heights, and when they get on those chains, it probably causes some sort of traumatic effect. I have a fear of heights, but it really hasn't bothered me that much, but I could see how it could bother you. Watch your step. It's a long way down. Everyone's favorite Torghast, Tower of the Damned, received quite a long list of changes as well in this patch. Not only do you now get a brief description upon queuing for the Torghast run as you enter the portal with your group, you also have a great deal of power and anima changes in here for both Coven and class. So I strongly encourage you to go check out your Coven. I'm going to check out Necrolord for my old Shaman there, and also look at the decently long list of Shaman changes they've made in Torghast. Torghast has been both a welcome sight to some players and a really hated sight for some players. So I'm hoping they continue to tweak Torghast. Final Fantasy XIV had a huge success with this particular type of endlessly scaling dungeon to challenge groups and solo players. I really enjoyed the fact that WoW was going to put this in here with their own touch. Obviously, there are some problems. There are places that it fell short, but WoW is a master of taking something that someone else has created, molding it into their own creative engine, and creating something great. They've been doing it since the very beginning, and they're probably the best at it. Torghast, I think, needs a lot more cranking and wrenches and screws and hammers in places, but I think they'll get there. And I personally, though I haven't been doing Torghast a whole lot, I still try to get in there once a week on one of my characters just to get a little soul ash, since I have legendaries on all my characters, so there's really no reason at this point to farm it. I'll probably get back into that once we get closer to 9.1, because I'm guessing we're going to have some legendary changes. But at the end of the day, I think it's a cool feature, and I think as they continue to hammer this out, that they're going to have huge success with it. So stay tuned to Torghast. Don't give up on it yet. And, check this out, because I personally think the anima powers are a lot of fun. I mean, hell, as a Death Knight, you get an army of the 4 horsemen. Like, seriously. The only thing cooler was to, pull Wolverine out of a comic book and slap him in there, and he can just get angry and slash shit up. Legit. X-Men joke, 4 horsemen of a... Never mind. And finally, and probably the most anticipated change of 9.05, Valor. Now, Valor points are kind of Blizzard's way of alt catch-up, main gearing. It's a way for them to make PvE, Mythic Plus, and PvP kind of similar in the ways that you gear. Obviously, if you're doing PvP and you're working up the rank system to 1400, 1600, 1800, 2200, you've got the gear, you're getting the gear through your conquest points. Not everyone is a Mythic Raider. Not everyone raids at all. Some people just like to do keys, and Blizzard obviously looks at those folks, and some people even struggle more with some of the lower keys, just because they're more casual players. They don't have a lot of time to put it in practice and really be able to push the KSM style abilities. So the Valor system is a way for them to look at this. Now, you can obviously do your research. I strongly suggest that you do, as far as how to get Valor and all that stuff. But you'll be able to get Valor in 3 different ways. The first way, your culling quest. So again, bringing value to those daily quests that, for me, I kind of try to avoid. But also, you can get them doing your keys anyways. If you're doing a key +2 through +100, it doesn't matter what plus you go to. Whenever you complete a key, you're going to get 135 Valor points. Now, prior to the release of 905 and the first few people actually doing the keys, we had no idea what we were going to get for Valor out of that. But out of several people doing multiple levels of keys, it looks like 135 seems to be how much Valor you're going to get. They've also got a cap of 5,000 for the first week. Now, 135 plus the cullings, you might be able to get a decent amount out. You'd have to grind a lot of keys to hit 5,000. But there's also going to be weekly caps, etc. Now, what you want to look at is, how do I upgrade my gear? Well, in order to upgrade gear up to, including 197, you can upgrade that with your Valor points regardless of what key level you've hit. So that's cool for your casual players. They can get better gear from what they're normally getting, up to 197. In order to get your gear to 200 or higher, you have to have the achievement Mythic +5 or higher on all Shadowlands Season 1 dungeon. That is called Shadowlands Keystone Explorer Season 1. You need to have this. Now, these are now account-wide. They weren't originally, but they are now account-wide for all your characters. So if you have it on one character, all your characters will do. For characters that want to get 207 or higher, that's rank 8 or higher, they need to have the Shadowlands Keystone Conqueror or higher, which means +10s on all Shadowland dungeons on one of their characters, and that'll give them access to 207 and higher gear. In order to get 213 up to 220, you will need KSM, which is +15s on all dungeons for Season 1. Now, that will unlock all the way up to 220, I believe, gear. And now you may be saying, but raid gets higher. Yes, because just like in PvP, not everyone's going to make 2,200 or 1,800, conquest. They're not going to have the time to put in. They're not going to have the skill to put in. In PvE, the high-end gear still comes from raiding, because that is the pinnacle of PvE content according to Blizzard. You may like that. You may not like that. It doesn't really matter. But this gives you an opportunity to at least get better gear, even if you're not raiding. Now, you may be asking, how much does each item cost to upgrade? Well, there's a variety of different items that are in different tiers. I strongly encourage you to look this up, but I'll go over it quickly. 250 Valor will get you your shield, offhand, ring, cloak, bracer, neck. 400 for a couple other items. 475 for legs, chest, helm. 500 for your agility, one-handed weapons. 750 for one-handed intellect weapons. 1,000 for any two-handed weapon. And we're still not quite sure, although I'm sure if you log into the game, which I haven't done yet, you can see how much the strength weapon is going to be, speculated around 500 or 750. So you can tell it's going to take you a little bit of time to get to these thresholds to upgrade your gear. I mean, ultimately, not only achievements, but 250, that means you have to do at least 2 keystones to upgrade your shield, offhand, ring, cloak, bracer, neck, and that's if you even got those items to begin with, because keep in mind, any item you've got before 9.0.5 does not count in the Valor system. So any of your gear that you want to upgrade, you are going to have to go back in and re-farm it. Also, as we mentioned for the last week, the vault has changed. And the vault now is going to show you, for raiders, mind you, this is raiders, the top tier is now going to be changed. So now it's 369 for your 3 options instead of the previous What was it? 3-7-10, I believe, was the previous. So also check that out if you are doing raiding, including LFR. But guys, that's going to do it for this week's Warcraft recap. I hope that you're enjoying Shadowlands as much as I am, and there's so much more coming up in the next couple weeks and months as we prepare for the big drop of 9.1 and the new raid, where we get to kill Kel'Thuzad again for the third time. Jeez, he's like the turd that won't flush, man. You sit there and you plunge it and you plunge it and you flush and you curse and you yell and he just won't flush. For fuck's sake.